Mr. Clements, is there anything you wish to say?
There is.
Go ahead.
I find it disturbingly ironic that at the nascence of each of the last 3 trials in which I've been a defendant in this court, Mr. Martyr, you have, in baronial locution, lectured the jury about the importance of a fair trial being afforded to every citizen of this country. You stressed to the jurors that if these rights so enshrined in our Constitution were not adhered to, quote, we are lost, unquote. Using Joseph Stalin's show trials of the Soviet era, you attempted to illustrate trials of the United States nomenclature as being diametric to the iniquitous nature of those conducted at the behest of the late Russian dictator. Mr. Martyr, I'm unsure if you were simply repeating some platitude you gleaned from law school or the History Channel in an effort to embellish the verisimilitude of your court, or if you were offering a tacit acknowledgement that the proceedings thereto overseen by your predecessor, and from that point to jury deliberation overseen by yourself, would be anything but fair. Either way, all 3 trials that I've endured in your court would have no doubt made any Soviet chairman of the Council of People's Commissars proud. It's inconceivable how any person with even a semblance of pragmatism or objectivity could call what just happened a fair trial. Mr. Martyr, maybe you believe, like countless others, that a trial is fair so long as it takes place in the United States. Or maybe, also like countless others, you don't practice what you preach and instead embrace the ever-growing ideology that the end justifies the means and all else in between is nothing but ceremony. With alacrity, you saw that these trials took place even though the case was saturated with substantive rulings left by a judge, your predecessor, who was found to be biased by the Judicial Conduct Commission. You denied to even look at these rulings unless, of course, doing so would benefit the prosecution. You denied a change of venue even in light of the fact that this city's collective media had chose to supplant calumny for veracity and propagate guilt into the community's minds long before these trials ever even commenced. And it was you, Mr. Martyr, specious champion of the American citizen's right to a fair trial, that actually had the temerity to commiserate with jurors after a hung jury and inform them of my record and previous conviction begotten in your court. You assured those jurors that I would not be getting out of prison. Your sentiments and bias went from your very mouth to those hung jurors and from them to the media. And the media, our so-called Fourth Estate, didn't hesitate to put what you said to those jurors into print and television as cannon fodder for the next jury. Your actions helped ensure that a guilty verdict in the next trial was all but certain. The trials and the hearings leading up to them are the best examples of confirmation bias I've ever seen. And I've read a lot of books about village hangings carried out by the Crown in the Middle Ages, Hitler's fascist government, Pol Pot and his ruthless Khmer Rouge regime, and yes, Joseph Stalin's purges and show trials. I still maintain my innocence, even if such innocence has never been presumed by anyone in this court or the community in which it operates, other than my attorneys and maybe a few people too afraid to utter such an outre belief. Though this experience has tested my trust in the American justice system, I still believe in this system constructed by our founding fathers. It's not perfect, and those good men knew as much. They knew that injustices and unfairness of courts like King George's and in countries like Spain and France could insidiously make their way onto American soil. It's one of the reasons why we have appeals, Mr. Martyr, because of judges like you. Maybe in your next perennial discourse to a jury about what isn't a fair trial, you should contemplate using the trials I endured in you and your predecessors' courtrooms as an exemplar instead of Stalin's slightly fair kangaroo hearings. In closing, I'll quote your words, Mr. Martyr, words that eerily mirror those of a German journalist who watched in dismay as men in brown shirts lurked toward the newspaper she worked at in Berlin circa 1934. Quote, "We are lost," unquote.
Okay.